In the first fight of the night, we have Charles Johnson taking on Ramazan Temirov. This is a badass fight to kick off the card because Charles Johnson is willing to take on anybody. He knocked out Joshua Van not too long ago, and he is a very good fighter, so it's going to be interesting to see what he can do against Ramazan Temirov, who has only had one fight in the UFC, but he has won most of his fights in dominant fashion, whether it be a decision or TKO, which is similar to the fashion of Charles Johnson. However, Johnson does not have as much power in his hands. Temirov has had one fight in the UFC so far and finished it in 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Charles Johnson does not have the same power in his hands, as most of the TKOs on his record come from before the UFC, and even when he does TKO someone in the UFC, it is usually far into the fight. For example, when he knocked out Joshua Van, it was very late into the fight, sometime in the late third round when it was called off. This fight is very close, and Charles Johnson is a plus 102 underdog, so there could be some money to be made there because the other guy doesn't seem like he's the craziest grappler either. He does not have any submission wins, and if he does, then it is only one but not in the UFC. I think the odds on Charles Johnson being plus 102 are kind of crazy because he's beaten the last 4 they have put in front of him and earned his ranked spot and should be fighting up the rankings, not down to defend the spot. So I feel like this fight is going to be a close fight, but Charles Johnson will use his reach and height advantage to win this fight by decision. To kick off the main card, we have Danny Barlow taking on Sam Patterson. Danny Barlow is a huge prospect. I believe he came off Dana White's Contender C series, and he's also undefeated. The interesting thing about fighters that are undefeated this year is that a lot of them have lost their zeros. I'm pretty sure undefeated fighters coming into 2025 are 6-12 overall this year, which is crazy because usually like to keep their O's until they progress up to close to the rankings, at least. But this year, we've seen a lot of fraud checks. However, I don't think there's going to be a fraud check, because Danny Barlow is an excellent fighter and he has a strong left hand. One of my first YouTube videos included a prediction for his previous fight, where I predicted him to win by the second round TKO, but he was only able to win by decision, although it was a pretty dominant decision. But he's a pretty good fighter. He has a piston on the left hand, left straight, I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure he fights a southpaw, so he is pretty good. The only thing I can say that could be a threat to him in this fight is the grappling. He's a stand-up fighter, and Sam Patterson has a decent takedown accuracy in the UFC fights he's had. Finding the difference between me on the feet, Sam Patterson stands no chance. Sam Patterson has no defense, and he can't strike with great accuracy. And the fights Sam Patterson has had in the UFC, he has been outstruck, and like most of them, so the only threat I would say for Danny Barlow is going to be the submission from Sam Patterson. But I believe he'll win this fight. I believe Danny Barlow won this fight by TKO because he is the stronger guy. Strong, takedown, defense, and he's gonna smoke him with the left hand. The third fight on this 6-card main card is Austin Lane versus Mario Pinto. This is a heavyweight clash, so it's bound to finish by knockout if we're being real. Austin Lane won his last fight against Rebellious de Spain, but we quickly found out that Rebellious de Spain is absolute garbage and can't win a battle to save his life if it's in mixed martial arts. Striking is different, but I'm pretty sure Austin Lane used to be a football player, and I also saw him get knocked the hell out by Justin Tafa, who is just a brawler. So clearly, he has no instinct to keep distance and he is athletic, but has the IQ of these other blobs. He has shot a couple of takedowns, but those are against de Spain, who's the worst grappler I've ever seen. So it's going to be an uphill battle for him to fight against Mario Pinto. Mario Pinto is a really solid fighter because he can outstrike his opponents a lot. He has big power in his hands. He's 9-0, undefeated. In his fight on the Dana White Contender Series, he landed so many strikes against his opponent. The fight was only 1 minute and 43 seconds, but he was just doubling the output that he had. Overall, he's pretty well-rounded too, because he has at least one win by submission, a couple by decision, and the rest by TKO. So he can go wherever he wants with this fight because Austin Lane is mostly a TKO guy. He has a bit of wrestling, but he cannot submit anyone. I still think he's going to get smoked, though. So my final prediction for this fight is going to be Mario Pinto to win by TKO in the first round, just really smoking him in the jaw. I don't know why this fight between Nasrat Haqparast and Esteban Ribovics is at the apex of all places. Esteban Ribovics is a very exciting prospect, and he's coming off maybe the fight of the year against Daniel Zellhubers, which was a back-and-forth fight a lot. Some people scored it for Zellhubers, but I scored all 3 rounds to Esteban Ribovics, with the last one being a 10-8 round because of the way he put pressure on Zellhubers for the whole last, 30 3 minutes of the fight. I think he's going to be in the rankings for sure. I've seen some high-quality striking from him. He was able to stand with Daniel Zellhubers. He was able to knock out Terrence McKinney very quickly, too. So I think that in this fight, he's gonna probably win by TKO or decision, one of those two. He likes to stand. He's not much of a grappler. If he's really in trouble, he'll shoot a takedown, but I don't think he will. He is perfect because he's a pressure fighter, and he's always on the front foot no matter what. Like in his fight against Zellhubers, he was on the front foot a lot, so that was what allowed him to win some of the exchanges later on in the fight. The only problem with this is that Nasrat Haqparast has pretty good defense too, so he'll be able to try and find a countershot if Esteban Ribovics is pressuring without any instinct. They're very similar in the way they finish fights, except Ribovics can also submit people, even though he doesn't take the fight to the ground too much. But this fight has Esteban Ribovics as a -250 favorite, and I think I agree with those odds because he should be fighting someone closer to the rankings. After this fight, I think he should be fighting a guy on the edge of the top 15 or just on top of that top 15, like Grant Dawson, Bobby Green, or Jim Miller or something like that. That'd be a great next fight for him because I'm picking Ribovics to win this fight by TKO. We have an exciting fight on our hands between Manel Kape and Asu Almabayev. Manel Kape enters the octagon with the skills of a very complex striker. He is known for his very fast hands and very flashy striking because he has the skills to outpoint anybody if he wants. Over his UFC career, he has shown the power to change a fight with a single well-timed combination with his hands, earning him a potential chance to get a title shot in 1 to 2 more wins. However, he has shown a very big weakness when he faces grapplers where he becomes very hesitant to throw strikes due to the fear of the takedown. His fight against Almabayev puts his skills to the test because Asu is a shorter fighter with a compact frame, so he is going to try and get a hold of Kape because he will get pieced from the outside if he doesn't try to get to Kape. Asu Almabayev is looking to make a name for himself because he has been a slow riser through the rankings and has been battle-tested before, but he has not gone 5 rounds in the UFC and neither has Manel Kape. The advantage Kape has during this fight is that he has trained for 5 rounds and was scheduled to fight 5 rounds this whole time while Asu was scheduled to fight against Steve Ertzog, and that was only for 3 rounds. The jump from 3 rounds to 5 rounds is a make or break for some fighters. It's going to be very interesting to see if Kape can effectively defend takedowns and land decisive, heavy strikes. He could overwhelm Asu and secure an early finish or build a significant lead on the scorecards. There is also a clear path to victory for Asu, which will be for him to grapple and try to stay on the front foot because he does not want Manel Kape to get into the rhythm and start piecing him up the same way Kape did to Bruno Silva. My final prediction for this fight is going to be Manel Kape to win this fight by decision. I think he will be wary of the dangers that Asu has with the grappling, but I think that Manel can keep the distance and piece him up for 5 rounds as Asu gasses as the rounds go by. Let's go Manel!